Joel Edgerton is a well-known and established actor, seen in acclaimed films like Warrior, Zero Dark 30, and The Great Gatsby. Well, now he's back, starring in a new movie, The Gift. Except this time around, he also wrote and directed the film. It's a psychological thriller about two high school acquaintances that reconnect and soon learn that the past can definitely come back to haunt you. We know you in acting. You wanted to be a director in this one. You did a short film. Was that a goal in your career the whole time, or is that something that just popped up from set to set when you said, I'm going to take a shot at this?
No, I think it's been a bit of a plan for at least the last 10 years. You know, I've been part of a collective of guys that make films, and I always really envy the fact that these guys have been able to stick around with a movie and see it through to the very end. Whereas as an actor, you kind of dive in once everybody's sort of got everything organised. You dive in, you stand around, you say a few things, you know, they film you, you leave, and then they put the movie together. And it's, you know, it's a great job being an actor, but you only get to see one part of the storytelling process. And as the last 10 years have been moving forward, I started writing a lot more and had this plan to direct. And finally, when I wrote this screenplay, I thought this is a good, achievable one for me to start, you know, cut my teeth on.
What I appreciate, you also wrote the film, but sometimes when you hear actors turning into directors, they choose like a period piece or something very subtle and quiet. This is a genre film, one that I particularly am a big fan of it. So I'm just curious, was that something that just evolved out of writing the script, or do you like, you know, you had like a affection for these type of movies?
I have a real affection for these type of movies, and funnily enough, my taste as an actor is you know, quite varied, and this is not necessarily the kind of movie that I'm always looking to be in. In fact, I've been in very few movies that are even like this. But as a writer, I'm very interested in thrillers. I'm very interested in subject matter where people are lying to each other and deceiving each other, and where it seems like of all the three movies I've been involved in writing, they're always about a guy doing something terrible and his life falling apart as a result of it, which is very much what, you know, happens to Jason Bateman's character in this film. So I love thrillers, a big fan of Hitchcock, you know, a big fan of a lot of those staple kind of triangle thrillers of the 80s, you know, Fatal Attraction, Cape Fear, you know, and also just suspense movies in general. Love them.
Now, suspense is very important. What's brilliant about your film is you can tell that you know sort of the cliches, you know the conventions people have used, and you use the audience's knowledge of, oh wait, this is, and then you kind of slide a hand on them. I mean, was that something when you were devising all these little moments that you're like, you know what, I'm going to throw them a little curveball here?
I think there's a way. I mean, the fact that that suspense is about keeping the audience on the edge of their seat and in a suspenseful frame of mind, and therefore using mystery and what's hidden. Given that the genre is well-worn, it's full of well-worn tropes.
Absolutely.
You know, I feel like the way to keep it fresh and the way to keep it mysterious is to lead us down that path, keep one foot well in the genre world that we're familiar with, and then find new ways to kind of shake things up and keep it mysterious. Because if it's too familiar, then it becomes predictable.
A lot of people, unfortunately, fall into that trap because you'll see some movie and you're like, oh, we've been down here, but what you did was fantastic.
Yeah, I think there's a real trick if you can strike the balance, and hopefully we have too, is like, the audience is very smart, you know, particularly with these kind of movies. You're wired to kind of guess what's happening and what's going to happen next, and let the audience sort of be right up there with you, but constantly manage to surprise them in a way that's, you know, feels surprising yet inevitable. You know, we do things that the audience will be like, I know what this kind of movie is, and then, you know, as you say, with a bit of sleight of hand, but from character, find a way to keep them gripped and surprised.
Well, you talk about character, and my question that's kind of interesting is, you said you've acted in just no films like this before, a few films.
It's been a couple, yeah.
But you're directing a film, and you can cast anyone, but you cast yourself in the role of Gordo. What was it about that character you said, I just can't let him go, I need him?
It was a fair amount of nepotism, I guess. There was the first thing when the first thing was I had this idea of writing a story about a guy who was such a great guy in high school, and 20 years after high school he runs into that person that he victimized. And I thought, this is a great idea for a story, and I'd always been interested in playing someone a little bit off, a little bit weird, a little bit unpredictable, and so when I wrote the script, I was like, I'm going to write this, I'm going to play this character of Gordon, and I'm going to get somebody else to direct the movie. And as the script started to evolve, it was evident to me that this was something that would be a good idea for me to direct. And I almost let go of the idea of playing the character, and then I kept sort of toying with pulling out of the movie as an actor. But given that Gordo's presence in the movie is there, he's there for a certain amount of time, but other sections of the movie he's sort of vacant, and we're wondering what's happening. It felt like I could do both, I don't think I would have presumed to have directed a movie and starred in the movie. I think that would have been too difficult. But thankfully I have a wonderful brother who's an amazing director. When I was on set as the character, he could be behind the camera, and I could use him as an outside eye and a director for me in those moments, which really helped, and I couldn't have done it without him.
Were there any challenges of putting both hats on? I know that you mentioned earlier that those days were the toughest days when you were acting and directing. Any secrets?
I felt like I'd made a mistake at first. And the first day that I was, I had the earring on and my teeth and my kind of, my dark eyes, and I was there thinking, what am I doing? Like, can I really, really have the right objective mind for directing myself? And in the end, I don't think it was a mistake, because I'm really happy that I did both things. But I think the real trick is knowing yourself and being ultra prepared anyway as a director, and then just backing yourself. And once you make a decision, you just got to ride it through. But having that outside eye was so important, rather than, it would feel weird if you and I were in a scene together and I was calling action and cut and then going, all right, I was good, but listen, what you need to do is this. The trick was, and the reason why I really think twice about doing it again, is having to give another actor notes after you've been in the same scene with them. It just doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, we managed, thankfully, with that help of my brother.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned characters and casting yourself. Jason Bateman, who of course we never always say a dramatic, dark film, we always think comedic. Was that your first choice? Was there any kickback from like, hey, I want Bateman in this movie? Wait, what, who?
Yeah, well, Jason Blum admitted to me last night that he said, if you remember early on, I was saying to you, I don't think it's a good idea. Not that they didn't think Jason was a good actor, but oftentimes people are thinking about marketing, and you go, well, how do you teach the world that there's a guy who we're so familiar with seeing in comedies, suddenly being in a dramatic film? That the expectation is maybe that this is supposed to be a comedy. And, but Jason is just such a wonderful actor with such a kind of great range of skill. And I think it's an exciting thing when comic actors take a sort of a walk down drama land. Because I think they're so good at it. Compared to the way, say, a common sort of dramatic actor would then try and go, okay, well, now I'm going to do a funny walk and try and make people laugh. And, you look at the history of that with, most recently with Steve Carell in Foxcatcher, Jim Carrey and Robin Williams. These guys were first, they made us laugh, and then they also had an ability to make us cry or be scared or do all those sort of more dramatic things. And also for our film, we wanted a guy that we love and trust that can then also transform into qualities that are not so lovable. And Jason, as you'll see in the movie, he just did such a great job of it.
Well, what's great about his performances, and I'm sure it was under your direction, subtle in the beginning where you're like, kind of get that feeling like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
And then as it unravels, you're like, okay, now I definitely don't like this guy.
Well, also, because so much of the movie is really about, the center of the movie is Rebecca Hall's character. And as she watches this old bad blood between these two guys play out, and she's never really sure what really happened between them years ago, and she's not really sure who's the villain and who's the hero. And some point she starts thinking, maybe my husband is someone that he doesn't profess to be. And, that those roles start to shift. And, from the very beginning, we get a feeling like he's a little bit too much in control of this woman. And so much of the film is her evolution of realising these things in order that she can make her own choices rather than be led by him.
A lot of people love the characters, and that's what makes this movie stand out, because it's not just about suspense and thrills, but you're going to have that side of the audience, especially when you talk about marketing, that wants the fear and suspense, and you do deliver. Now, as a director, and I don't know if you were in the screening last night or if you've sat in other screenings, is that your reward? I mean, you were getting sighs, you were getting scrunches, jolts from the audience. Is that when you're like, I've succeeded, I've done it?
I think, the general feeling is that an audience should be well behaved and quiet. And, I think the opposite. If you have someone yell at the screen, don't go in there or something, But when you feel that either collective suppressed sort of silence of an audience or a scream or something, there's some very artful moments in the movie where we do elicit that fear out of the audience, and there's some very terrifying moments in there. As you say, it's all born out of character, but it is a genre movie. So it is a real reward when you get to see the way you've crafted that movie kind of really hit everybody in the right place. And we love going to the cinema to get scared because it's a safe place to get that thrill. It's kind of like going on a roller coaster. We know we're kind of going to come out of it okay. So yeah, I love it. And of course, as a big fan of the genre, it was really important for me to make sure that as much as this film is also a very dramatically resonant movie about bullying and about the roles we play in life and how we treat each other as human beings, and whether we're able to look back and acknowledge our wrongs, it's also a thriller. It's also a movie that's designed to make us feel like gripped. And hopefully more gripped because the villain, in our case, or at least if you call him the villain, is someone that could exist in any one of our lives. If we look back and think, what have we done to other people?
That's true.
Yeah.
And I know, Spielberg, he made Jaws and the shark was broken, right? So they didn't have the shark in a lot of the shots, but that made it even more suspenseful.
Yeah.
Was that something, I know you said Gordo wasn't in it a lot, but that, his lack of being there, as you said, also made it more suspenseful. Was that something due to scheduling and character, or was the original draft more Gordo and as you refined it?
No, it was always this feeling like, we've walked down that path, which is, kind of, those characters like Glenn Close and Robert De Niro, Fatal Attraction and Cape Fear, we start to ramp up the tension. And the moment this couple realise that Gordo is too overbearing and is visiting them too much, and they ask him, this is it, break up with you, that sets us up for that feeling like bad stuff is going to happen. Yes, it's going to happen, but when is it going to happen? And I feel like the unknown is often far more terrifying and mysterious than someone that's popping out of a cupboard every 5 minutes. So, it's just sort of choose your terror. And for me, my terror is not buckets of blood. It's just massive question marks and fear of the fact that you think you're alone in your house and maybe you're not.
Or in this case, fear is nicely wrapped gifts.
Yeah,
red cards.
Yeah. What if you were to receive a gift and you actually were terrified of opening it up?
How do you feel about taking something so warm and then making people be honest, go, not another, don't open that, not another gift?
Yeah, well, I kind of feel a little bit guilty about that because, I think Stephen King ruined clowns for me with It. And then I'm sure it was Chucky or other, horror movie makers ruined children and dolls for me. These innocent things that then can take on a sinister edge. So, don't be frightened of opening your gifts at Christmas, but definitely go check this one out.
Especially if it's not on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Under the tree, okay. Doorstep,
yeah,
maybe
depending
not.
who it's from. Yeah.
And then just seconds away, what's next for you? Is the director's chair going to be in your future soon? Are you going to go back to acting for a while?
I'm going to shoot another movie with Jeff Nichols, who's one of my new favourite people. Jeff, who made Mard, and he and I made another movie last year together called Midnight Special. We're going to do a very important movie about the civil rights case that overturned, made a big change in this country for interracial marriage, called The Loving Story, or Loving Project. And later in the year, I've got Black Mass coming out, which I'm really excited about.
For that too.
But yeah, definitely going to get in the director's chair again. And I'm lucky because I get to work with these guys as an actor and just take notes along the way as to how I approach things myself, which is it's actually a really privileged position to be in if you keep your eyes and your ears open.
But just before we stop talking about the gift, I received a gift myself.
It sort of says, I forgive you. This actually kind of gives me chills now. I'm going to give that to you. That's for you. Someone told me to give it to you.
Sometimes they say your past is your present.
That's right. That's right.
Oh dear. UC Davis. I'm indeed an Aggie alum. The question is how did Gordo know this? Well, I appreciate the time. Gift August 2nd. Loved it.
Thank you very much, man.